What we'll be looking at today is we'll be looking at various data loading or unloading, or in short we call it as a data movement. In other words, the options of export and import, such kind of an options we look at today. Just a quick slide on what do we have prior to data movement utilities. If I have to load massive amounts of data, the only option I have is SQL insert statement. So that's not feasible when we are talking about million records of data load, or when I want to pull a data in a specific format, the select statement is also not feasible. So I need something beyond this in the form of utilities. That's where it's not just in db2, any database, every database in fact provides some or other kind of data movement utilities. So db2 provides three such utilities. One is export, another one is import, third one is load. Export is to take data out of db2 database. Import is to put data inside, and load is of the same functionality as import, but which is much faster. Before we go and understand these three different utilities, let's first understand what are the various file formats available in db2. There are 5 different file formats. When I say file formats, the data related, which is the input or output from these utilities. There are 5 standard file formats that db2 has. The first one is non-delimited or fixed length ASCII. In short, we call it as ASC file format. Second one is delimited ASCII, which we in short call it as a DEL. Third one is PC version of integrated exchange format, which is the binary format, IXF format, in short we call it as. Worksheet format, and fifth one is cursor. Now let me explain in detail with an example against each format. Non-delimited or a fixed length. Before I go there, we have something called delimiter. Whenever we deal with data, we use this word called delimiter. What is a delimiter? Delimiter is a technique or is a kind of a solution that actually separates column or a row. For example, if I have a student data like this, if I have a student table like this, student ID, student name, student gender, something like this. If I want to put it or write it on a paper, or if I want to put this information on a file, this is one way of putting it for data movement or data transfer. So here there is a term called delimiter, which actually separates the column data. 501 and Chandra here are separated with a comma. Comma is a column delimiter. Similarly, we also have something called row delimiter. By default, the row delimiter is new line. So this is one row and this is a second row. This is a second format we were talking in the PPT. Delimited data. Delimited ASCII, which is in a plain text. Right? But we also have something called non-delimited. This is an example of delimited. We also have something called non-delimited. So when you hear the word non-delimited, it means It is not possible for me to put any delimiter between columns, whatever is the reason. If I'm trying to put comma, probably comma is part of a user's input. If I'm trying to put some other character here, that character can be a part of user's input or data. So I cannot use comma as a delimiter on one line, and I cannot use exclamation as a delimiter in other line. Delimiter has to be standard across the given file. So in such kind of a scenarios, we can go for non-delimited, saying that I cannot put a standard delimiter. So you have to send me the data always in a fixed size. For example, student ID should always come in 3 characters. Student name should always come in 6 characters. Student gender is always 1 char. So what happens if I represent the data in ASCII format? Here is 501 Chandra male, 502 Usha. Since there is no enough data, we'll be getting spaces there. This is how we represent data in a non-delimited format. Right. This is little pain, but the problem we have is you cannot use any single character as a delimiter to segregate column data. But one major difference you can see here is in non-delimited, each row is of the same size. But in a delimited, because you have a delimiter, each row can be of a varying length. Just a different formats of storing the data. It's up to you whether you want to use it or not. Depends on business need, right? One is delimited, another one is non-delimited. So the third kind of format it supports is binary. You see, this is all text. Probably this helps me to migrate between db2 to Oracle or Oracle to db2. But if I am moving from between db2 and db2, production to non-production, I don't really need to get the data in a text format. I can get the data in a db2 internal supported binary format, so that file size is small, FTP is faster, import is faster, export is faster. So in a binary. So this is called IXF format. PC version of the integrated exchange format. It's again a strange name, came from mainframe world. The fourth format it supports is a worksheet format. This is for IBM Lotus Notes applications. I haven't used this in many years, so just as an information. And fifth one is a cursor, which is only supported by load. I'll show you that example. So in summary, we have 5 different file formats supported, and more detailed information is written in this bottom section here, just in case you want to study. This is the 5 formats that db2 movement utility supports. That does not mean each one supports all 5. We'll see what is supported by what in the next slides. Any questions on these 5 before I move on to the next slide?
No, Ravi.
Okay. Now let's get going with the export command. Export is a way I can take data out of a database table or multiple tables. It exports data from database tables to a file using an SQL select statement. It indirectly does the same select statement, but it gives me a little more extra options. What are the files or formats it supports? We discussed 5 in the previous slide, but it only supports 3. It supports delimited ASCII, it supports IXF, it supports worksheet. But this guy does not support non-delimited or fixed. This guy does not support cursor. A quick example. If I want to export output of the select statement, right? Export, where do I want to export? Which I specify using to the file name. Since it supports more than one file format, you have to specify the file format as OFF and DEL. It can be case insensitive too. Very simple way of exporting data. Whatever is the select statement you want to run, precede that with export to the file name of specific file format. Let's look at one example. Okay, let me create a quick table. So we got one database here. Let's say connect to test db1. We get into db2 CLP. Right, when I say connect, it shows me the currently connected information. I say create table, or you can say list tables to see the tables currently we have. I already have a customer. Describe table customer gets me the definition. Select count star from customer. I have 8 records. Let's export these 8 records. Nah, data is in a mess. Let's delete from let's create a new table. Let's start fresh.
There is no need for semicolon here, Ravi.
No, it's auto semicolon. No need.
Because my name is 7 characters, right? So Chandra is 7 characters, right? So that's the reason it is failing.
Yeah, I'm just looking at which character to cut out of your name. Chandra.
Ravi is being too nice.
Okay, let's take out H. Okay. Insert into student values.
$502 probably.
Okay, right. Okay, so each record is auto commit by default. So I see three records here. My objective is to export this table. Probably the end objective is to import it into some other environment. Now let's look at how do I export this. It's very easy. I say that export. Where do I want to export? Let's export into a temp folder. Student.exp. Now the important thing to mention here is what format. Since export supports 3 different formats, I have to say DEL. The 3 formats that it supports is DEL, IXF or WSF. So let's DL is a text, IXF is binary, WSF is for Lotus Notes applications, worksheet format. So let's export in the form of text delimited. Now it simply has to proceed with select star from whatever is the SQL I want to export. The output that we get here will be exported and placed it in this file. If you see the running notes here, the export utility is beginning to export. Okay, has finished exporting 3 records. Number of rows exported is 3. I'll keep this window as it is. Let me open a duplicate window. If I get into temp, I should be able to see the file here, cat student.exp. This is how I have the data coming. It might give you an impression that it is a fixed length, even though I use the delimited here, del, right? It's because the way the character data gets stored, right? So character, as we know by definition, allocates all the space in advance, right? So even though I give 6 characters of storage there, since I have used 4 only for both of our names here, it just leaves spaces. Now let me give you one example to better explain this. Insert into student values, let's say 99. Now let me export this command. I have a necessary option here. Let me run the command called 12. 4 rows exported. If I cat student.exp, now you see delimited will be not an option to get a fixed length. I mean, if you have just a character data, it might give you an impression that it's a fixed length. No, but in fact, it is not a fixed length, right? So if you don't want to see this information, use varchar instead of a cat. Then you see the space is not coming in there. Okay. This is a very basic way of exporting, right? This is a very basic way of exporting. Whenever we are exporting, we see this information, right? But if there is any error, it also writes that information on the screen. That's not a good thing, because we need to capture those errors in some file so that we can come back, or we can refer that later. That's where we have an option to say that messages, right? exp.msg, then select star from student. Right. Let me go to history and edit 17 command. It opens a VI editor. Here I missed giving the format. Yes, I want to run it. Okay. Let me edit 17 command again. But I missed the syntax somewhere. Messages. What am I missing here? Why did not it use off DL? history, edit, 19, messages, right, quit, yes, okay, something not right. Okay, just the same command. I've been using one more extra option here, messages. Number of rows exported is 4. You see, it is not writing any other extra information. It's just simply saying number of rows exported is 4, right? In our previous example, it wrote, okay, it started exporting, it exported. But instead of that, all that information now will be written into this file. Let's open that file. We see all such information here. Even if any errors, it writes. It's like export log or import log. Just a different name here. But the thing to note here is in the exported file, we don't have column headings. Okay, we don't have a column heading. It's a separate process. If I have to move entire table from production to non-production, it's a two-step process. First, in db2, first you have to replicate the DDL, then you have to get the data into it. Any questions on these two options of export? One is a basic one, another one is we have just added messages. Right? Sometimes people ask me, what if I want to type it into a multiple lines, right? The command prompt, what happens is, since there is no semicolon, the moment you press enter, it's considered as, let's say, select star, and if I by mistake press enter, it considers it as a single SQL and tries to run it. So instead of that, if you want to continue it into multiple lines, put a backslash, then it comes as a line continuation. In export, what we have looked at is look at the delimiter. By default, it's picking it up, comma. Look at the delimiter it is using for storing character data. So I haven't specified the export command to use these as a delimiters, right? But it picked them by default. What if I want to change these default delimiters? That's where we use these extra flags. Called modified by. For character delimiter, instead of quotations, the default one, we can say use something else. For column delimiter, instead of comma, we can say something else. So let me show you that example too. Edit 23rd command. Messages. Modified by. Column delimiter, let's use exclamation. Column delimiter, let's use a single quote. Why it complains always for me when I use this history? Export to so and so of delimited format modified by. Okay.
Yeah, I think it is expecting another single quote.
Yeah, let's try that. No.
Yeah, what you need to do is, yeah, I'm not saying escape character. You have already kept one single quote, right?
Let's use
Put
this.
another
Okay.
single quote there, another single
Yeah.
quote, then it will work, I
Let's
guess.
change the character itself first, and then we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. So we might have to put that escape sequence. So now let's go back and see the data. Now I have changed the column delimiters and character delimiters. So that we can see it here. I mean, like this, you can use various modified by clauses. I'm not going to cover all of them. You can change the way time format comes in. You can change the code formats and all that information, right? But just extending. We started with the basic select clause, then we added export to, then we added messages, then we have added modified by, right? One important variant we need to be very careful with export is when my columns have advanced data types such as large objects. When I have a large object such as blob or a glob, we need to pay special attention. Why? For example, if I created a character large object, the character limit I can have is, let's say, 64K. I don't think I can have more than this for a character field. But when I talk about a glob, by default it has 100K as a starting limit. By default, the starting point itself it can have is 100K character large object, right? When I don't pay special attention while exporting these character large objects, right? If I don't pay special attention, what happens is glob is truncated to character length. In other words, the export command treats glob column as a character data itself, so it truncates 100K into 64K. So there is a loss of data. There may be a loss of data. So that's why when someone asks us to export a table or replicate a table from production to non-production, the first thing we look at is we look at the type of a columns it has. Yeah, as long as it has all the basic columns, we have no issues. If advanced columns such as glob or a blob comes into picture, that's when we have to pay special attention. The special attention in the form of using extra options. So we have to use this lobs in file, which says that to export lob data in full and store them in files different from the other column data, right? I don't want to mix the column which is a glob with the existing export. So generally the db2 recommends to put them into a separate file altogether, right? So it's also advisable to put them in a separate path, such as lobs to a specific path. So this is where we give a separate directory altogether, right? Inside this directory, whatever we specify to keep this character large object data, the file name, lob file. Let me show this with an example. I'll quickly create this example. Here what I'm doing is I'm doing a binary large object as the address field. I created the customer table. When I describe table customer, right? Look at I by default got 1 million characters length. Now let me insert data into this customer table. I've just inserted two columns, so whether it is a blob or char makes no difference because it's only two characters. But the issue comes when I insert more than what varchar can hold, then the truncation might be a scenario. We don't see a truncation here, we'll just see overall the processing of blob data. Now what I say here is, let me export this. So exporting to customer.del, I'm writing it to some messages file, the log. It says number of rows exported is 1, but you see a warning here. At least one warning message was encountered during load processing. When I say question mark, this is how the warning information I can see. It pretty much is spot on, right? It related to load and it gives a little information about why that warning and all that. But the warning is more related to if I say cat messages dot out, you see the warning information. The character data in column C address will be truncated to size 32,000. Sorry, it's not 64, it's 32,000. So as long as we have more than 32K, we have a concern, but here we have only two characters. But still it is giving a warning that you might see a truncation of data. This is not something we don't want in a production table. So that's why we use these extra options. Now if I see cat customer.out, customer.del, yeah, we see this data. That's the one record that I have inserted. But let me follow this blob technique, right? Now what we are doing here is here, let me maximize this. We say export to customer.del of a del format. Before messages, I say that, okay, put lobs in a separate folder. Okay. And in this folder, create a lob file with the name customer_blob. Okay, this is interesting. Let me do this. Lobs2. Temp Ravi. Let me go ahead and create the directory. Within this directory, lob file. What the lob file I want, customer_blob is a file name I want. And messages is like this, and I simply say select star from customer. Now you see I don't see that warning, but let's look at how the data will appear. When I say cat customer.del, first column 500, second column the name, third column 99. Instead of 99, you see what I see here. Instead of 99, I see whatever is the lob file name I gave. The lob file name is starting with 001. Like this, if that file is full 002, 003 for various columns. So the data is starting at 0th character and ending in 2 characters. Now if so this might be a little tricky. If I go to temp Ravi, you see that file. What are the file they are trying to refer here? Because this is the file name I gave here, lob file. So if you cat this, you might feel that there is no data, but actually you see some data here. First 2 characters. What this is saying is this is kind of a pointer. In this file, customer_blob, which is starting at a 0th character and 2 characters. That's a information. You don't have to go through all this pain unless you have a blob data type. So it's also very easy. You just have to use the extra flags in a separate directory and a separate file name. Let system take care of it. So this is little advanced export commands. So for us to have a better understanding, I had created some exercises already. So the exercises, there are like 5 exercises I believe in these db2 utilities. I haven't uploaded, but I'll upload this. So one of the exercises will again talk about export with the blob objects, import with the blob objects. So the expectation is you do this, by just following this, right? So before I take questions, what did we look at is we started with simple export command, or let's say simple select statement. Then we converted that into export. Then export is added with messages flag. Then export and messages modified by clause. Now we have added export. You can have modified by. Then we have LUWs. So these are the variants we can use. Okay. Yeah, if you look at, we have tried only the DEL format. We haven't tried the IXF format, but you can give customer.ixf of IXF. Now let me do that IXF syntax, since we are exploring anyway all these. So simply say export to student.ixf of IXF format. Select star from student. A simple one. If I say cat student.ixf, you see the data in a binary formats. IXF is a db2 proprietary binary format. So when do we use? When we are transferring large data, for example, like 100 million, 200 million records from a table. Now let's look at what is the export syntax. We have used export without looking at a syntax, but now let's look at the syntax. Export to file name of a file type. If we have a LUWs, we have to take care of a special attention, right? LUW file we just learned, the file name. Similarly, db2 can also store XML data type. XML is a non-structured XML file modified by. We also looked at messages and select statement. One thing we haven't looked at so far is method n, right? What is this method n signifies is, when I say cat customer.out, I got here 3 records, 3 columns, right? Since there is no heading here, right? It's tough for me to pick up a specific column while importing. Let's say you exported all these 3 columns, but while importing you are only interested in 1 column. Generally what do we do is we import entire data, then we say that okay, select only the specific column, right? But this method n, which is again a strange name from this came from like older mainframe world. This method n specifies to pick up a specific column from the input. I don't really have to load all the data, but this method n is only available for IXF format. I believe I have an example here. Okay. Now let me create that example with student. So let me say that export to student.ixf of ixf format, select star from student. Now data goes in ixf format, but if you look at describe table student, now let me create a table called student2 with just student name, right? Now from the exported student, I have all the three columns, but I'm interested in importing back only one. We haven't seen the import yet, but import is very easy. Exact opposite to export. You say export to, here you say import from. That's it. So let's go back and look at the syntax one more time. Import, where is the file name? Again, whenever you say file name, you have to specify the format. Method n, right? Insert into student. Now what is this method n says is, even though I say previously that there is no way db2 can store the column headings in the exported data, this ixf is a little variant. Now let's see the data here. Select star from student 1. Is it student 1, student 2? Oops, that's not right. Something not right. Okay, what am I missing? Both are of the same size. I was kind of hoping that it would insert all those 4 records. That's what it did. It read 4, it inserted 4, committed 4, but it did not get me the data, what I was looking. Right. So am I missing any delimiter stuff here? No, sorry. While exporting, I have to specify this option. Otherwise, how would my import know the column headings, right? So even though I said the DEL format does not have this kind of a facility, but IXF gives me this facility. What basically I have to do here is export to student.ixf of IXF method n. I have to give the headings here. What are the headings? SID, SName, SGender, select star from student. I got some warnings here. So what is this warning that I'm missing here? So I got a reason code 8. So if I scroll it up a little bit, I see the information. So I got some kind of an error. In this it is saying that method n is not supported. What is this hierarchical data? Okay, I'll explore this a little more later. Is it because I'm using the character? It's not supports this. But let's try to import and see if the data comes. But yeah, see the data came. But why that warning? Hierarchical data is not supported. Right. So this is what I have to do. I mean, I need to figure that out, why that hierarchical data error. While exporting, I have to give the column headings. But can I see these column headings? No, you cannot, because it's a binary version. Right. But system can see it. That's why export to student. Here we say that method n. Select star from student. Whereas import from student, I have to explicitly say that method n, I want only student name. This is a very nice feature. Right. I don't have to import entire table to filter out unnecessary columns. So that's what this method n meaning here. So while actually importing, I can specify the column name, or I can specify the column location. 1, 2, 3. I can specify 2 here. I can specify columns from 1 to 2, or 1 to 10, or 8 to 10, 8 to 5. Sorry, 8 to 9. Such kind of a range also I can specify. Different ways of importing the data. That we see it in import statement. So that's the story about export. It's there was an exercise. There is an exercise associated with it. Okay. Any questions?
So it is about normal regular inserts, right, Ravi?
Yeah, pretty much it's
So
about inserts. Yes.
is there any kind of option like bulk load thing, like in Oracle we use SQL loader,
Right. So
and
export is not an insert. Export is a select. Right. Import is an option to insert. Import is the one you're asking.
right,
Not the one you are asking. It's the first level of what you are asking. Load is the one you are asking. Right.
right.
So let's go there. Let's try to understand the import utility. We'll talk about the load, the bulk loader in Monday's session. What
So
does
we
import
have
do?
bulk load option, right?
Yes, we have.
Okay, got it.
Right. So now what is this import? Which is exact opposite to export. It imports the data into database. Same. Import from file name of a file type. If you have a LOPs, if you have XMLs, you have modified clauses. This is a method N. We already looked at in a import. But method L, column start and column end, column, or you can import using the column position. While actually the import is running, let's say you are importing 1,000,000 records. Do you allow access to the specific table, or do you allow write access? How frequently you want to commit? If a failure happens, where to restart? In a given 1,000,000 data, how many records to load? You can say that, okay, stop the load after 1,000 records load. Sometimes you get a heading at the starting. You can say skip count. The first 2 records just skip out. So while loading, you might get errors. So you specify here how many errors you can allow, warning count. While you are trying to load, if file is locked by someone else, how long to wait? The messages. And the import works in 4 different modes. We used insert in a previous example. Insert underscore update. If there is a primary key, it tries to update the record. You can also do it in a replace mode. It's like truncate and replace. If the table does not exist, it has an option to create the table, replace underscore create. Now this option is deprecated because they are giving a separate option altogether as create into a new table. You can also define table spaces. All these various options while importing. Right. This might be a little scary syntax at the first, but it's very easy, right? Various options, various controls you want while importing. Do you want to access? Do you want to allow no access? You want to restart? There is a warning count, right? If a failure happens, you might have to start from the previous checkpoint. That's a restart count. At the starting, you might have to skip like 10 records or 20 records, right? Things like that. All that information you give. Here are some
Right.
examples. I import from so and so. I can create a new table. I can import and I can insert, commit after every 500 records so that I am safe. Commit after 500 records, but restart from the 10,000 records. Restart count is only we come across this when my previous import fails. It might have inserted till 10,000 in a previous import. I don't have to start from scratch again. So that's when we use. Right, that's the story about import. The other story we have is a load. Load is actually the bulk loader. It's super fast. Right?
Okay.
If import takes 1 hour,
Right.
load can finish up in 5-6 minutes. It is that faster. We'll see why it is that faster in the next session.
From the table into like a flat file.
Right.
And say we are trying to move data from a table to the table in the same instance, or from table to another table of another instance.
Right. So we are looking at like you have a customer table, or let's say the student table here.
Mm-hmm.
You get into student table here. So you use a flat file plus FTP option. You export it into a flat file, then you FTP into a QA environment, you import it here. So when we are talking about the same instance,
anything like, those scenarios we get sometimes same instance, sometimes the different instances.
Right. So that's when you have to use, if you don't have to use, if you don't want to use the flat file, then the other option we have is a federation. So wait for that session.
Hope we'll do. Hope db2 also supports the CTAS option, right? Create table as, select star from table.
No, that's within the same database.
Right, yeah.
That's within same database. I mean, she's asking these two exist on the same instance, two databases. Right, but I can't use a DB link here. There is no such concept. The only concept is federation, even for different databases within same instance. So I'll do that in a federation. Federation, it's the example itself is there in the as part of federation class. So it doesn't matter whether they are part of same instance or a different instance. It's this federation concept.
Okay then.
All right. Yeah. You guys have a good weekend. We'll catch up next week, Monday.
Yeah. Thank you. See you on Monday then. Bye.
Have a good weekend. Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.